Hello, Brittney. We are so excited to have you on the podcast today. Thanks for being our guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good morning.
Yeah, awesome.
Good morning.
Well, just to get started, can you give us a little bit of your background, like who you are, what it is that you do for a living?
Sure. So my name is Brittney. I am an attorney with a law firm in Baraboo, Wisconsin. I practice primarily in family law. So I handle a variety of cases representing individuals who are going through like a divorce or a custody and placement case, paternity cases, adoptions, things like that. I also do a lot of what's called guardian ad litem work. So where I will actually represent children in those sorts of cases. And I do quite a bit of that in the surrounding areas.
Awesome. That's so cool. And so what does kind of a typical day look like for you? It sounds like you cover such a wide range of like cases. So I'm curious kind of what a typical day looks like.
It varies every single day. It's usually pretty intense. I will usually come into the day with a list of things that I want to do, and usually that never happens. So because I will constantly get phone calls, emails, emergencies that happen. But a lot of time I kind of come into the day, usually right away in the morning, I'll have several telephone status conferences with the court. So in a lot of cases that I have, we call into the court, talk to the judge, see how things are going in our cases. I'm usually in court for a court hearing or trial almost every single day. So in between emails, phone calls, I am preparing for those hearings, meeting with clients, meeting with children, going to schools, prepping witnesses. So every day is different, and it's intense. There's a lot every single day that goes on. There's always something to do.
I'm sure.
That's awesome. So all the stuff that you described, when you were like, hey, I want to do this for a living, did you have any idea that this is what it would entail? Like, did it meet your expectations, or is it completely different than what you were thinking this career would be like when you started?
Yes and no. So I always knew I wanted to do family law. I was never interested in any other area, personal injury, criminal, nothing. I used to, when I was in college, go to the Milwaukee courthouse and watch family law cases at the courthouse. I never wanted to be in a courtroom because it always really made me nervous, public speaking and talking to people. And the whole going into court just seemed really scary. So I didn't realize that as a family law attorney, that's all I would be doing every single day is going to court. So thankfully that, going into court almost my first day as an attorney, made me get over that fear very, very quickly. But in other ways, it's more than what I thought it would be. And in a better way, I really get to know these families. And from an emotional perspective, I really get to help them through very difficult times in their lives. And that's something I didn't realize. I would almost have to act like a therapist at times, which I enjoy doing. I like really helping people through probably some of the toughest times of their lives.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so that actually kind of leads into the next question that we were curious about, like, what is the most favorite thing about your job?
Helping people get through really tough, difficult situations, whether it's protecting a child from a very unsafe living environment or protecting an individual from an unsafe partner, whatever it is. Or I have some cases that are fantastic where I have a stepdad who wants to adopt his stepson or stepdaughter, and I get to help this family become whole. The adoptions are probably my absolute favorites. Just seeing that these people become a real family is pretty awesome.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. What's your least favorite, or maybe like the hardest thing about your job? If you could pick something. I'm sure there's a lot.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Sometimes your clients don't want to listen to you, and they like to go do their own thing. And then you have to try and salvage it, which can be very difficult. Yeah. I also, as guardian ad litem, I represent the children. I don't represent parents or what they want. And I give recommendations to the court on what I think should happen with the kids. And odds are I'm going to make one of those parents unhappy. So I deal with sometimes very unhappy parents or individuals. And that can be tough to deal with. They don't understand the work that I put into these cases to really support my recommendation. And sometimes it can get intense. I just very recently had a parent get very upset to the point where I had to file a restraining order and I had to file criminal charges. I've never had to do that in my career. So that was a little scary. But those are some of the things that we as attorneys deal with, and you have to constantly be on guard for and to look out for. But that's, to me, was the worst of the worst. I've never had that happen in my almost 10 years of practicing. So
is it hard not to like take that home with you? Like that's a lot. That's like a big burden to carry. And I don't know about you, but like, I don't like it when people are upset with me. Maybe some people enjoy that, but is that difficult to cope with for you?
It is. You know, I had that restraining order hearing 2 days ago. And it was incredibly difficult because, yes, I'm an attorney. This is my job. I deal with these difficult things and difficult people, but at the same time, I'm also a human being and I'm a mother. So if someone threatens me and threatens the life of my child, that does very much affect me. I was very scared. I still am. And, you know, other things, kind of talking about not bringing things home, I think that's also probably the least favorite thing of my career is I see very, very tough situations. I see children who are being abused by parents, caregivers, abused in multiple different ways, parents who are being abused, just any individuals. That is really tough when you see these innocent children and you see what they're going through. I've met, you know, this past year, I met with, I don't even know how many kids who just broke down into tears, and I just held them for how long because their parents were putting them in the middle of a divorce or making them choose sides. And that was tough to not just take those kids home with you. You know, and at the same time, I, you know, kind of reprimanded these parents and let them know the damage they're doing to these kids. I don't think a lot of parents understand how their actions are affecting their young children. So that's really hard to see and to go home with, knowing there's only so much you can do. And that sometimes you just want to take these kids home and give them a better life. But, you know, I can't do that. So that's hard but it makes me thankful when I go home and see my own family that, you know, we're not in that situation. I hope we never will be, but yeah, so it's hard to keep those emotions at work. And I don't always do that. So
that would be tough because divorce is no joke for anyone that's been through it. It's no fun trip. It's no fun ride. And, you know, my dad has worked in social work. And so he used to work for CPS, Child Protective Services. And he used to have to be that guy that would take those kids out of the abusive situations. And so similar to you, he was worried about his family and the safety and the protection. And, you know, back in the day when real phone books were a thing and everybody's address was listed in the phone book, we were unlisted because he was worried about, well, what if this ticked off parent comes after me and my family? So it definitely.
And I do, you know, I represent children in those in CPS cases. Those are the toughest. And I've also prosecuted those cases as the prosecuting attorney for different counties for those types of cases. So I eventually had to stop prosecuting those because I just emotionally I couldn't do it anymore. It was incredibly difficult. Those children are the most vulnerable individuals in our population. So I'm happy to try and protect them as guardian at Litem, but as the prosecuting attorney, that was getting tough.
Yeah, my dad got out of that as quickly as possible too, and went into
a lot of turnover in that career for a reason.
And it's so because you get into this career to help those kids, like you said, but it's like you can only do so much, and you know, at some point,
there's a lot of pressure on you if you don't, you know,
you got to get it right.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a big deal.
that's the hard part too of that type of job is if you don't do your job right or you have an off day, that could really determine the future of a child's safety in their life. So
Yeah,
it's a lot of pressure.
for sure. Crazy.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, shifting gears a little bit. So to become an attorney, there's levels of education that are required, right? So can you kind of explain to us a little bit about like all the education you had to receive, different trainings and that type of stuff?
Mhm. I won't lie, it's intense. It's a lot of work. I received my undergraduate degree from Marquette University back in 2009. That took me I originally started at UW-Milwaukee and then I transferred to Marquette. So it took me about 5 years to get my undergrad degree. And then it's 3 years of law school. So, so 7 years total. So it took quite some time. Or 8 years total. Sorry. So clearly my math skills are not very good. So
I neither. Not my forte.
yeah, it was a long couple of years. But it was better once I got into law school because then you actually started to focus on things that you wanted to do. But law school is very intense. It's very competitive. Especially that first year, they really try and weed people out who are not going to make it. So if you can get through that first year, you are good to go. Prior to getting into law school, we had to take the law school admission test, which was an incredibly difficult test. I am not a test taker. I'm not very good at those. So I had to take some pretty intensive training and prep courses, kind of like ACT, SAT prep courses. I did that for the LSAT. And then afterwards, after law school, most students have to take what's called the bar exam. Which is it's like a 3-day exam that it's like a comprehensive exam over your last 3 years of law school. And if you don't pass it, you don't get to become a lawyer, even though you pass school. Thankfully, Wisconsin is the only state in the United States that does not require the bar exam if you graduate from UW-Madison or Marquette. So I went to law school at UW-Madison. So thankfully, I did not have to take the bar exam. As I've heard, it's
nice.
Probably, yeah, I think that and one of the medical school exams they say are the hardest ones that anyone could take. So it's pretty intense. So I was thankful to get out of that. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then after school, we have to take continuing legal education every year, so many credits every year. So we're constantly having to be trained and updated as to, what's going on in our fields and whatnot. So
what are different paths you can take, starting like, think of our audience right now who are mostly high school kids, maybe down to 6th grade, to 12th grade. We'll probably have some parents listening, but most of our students right now are going to be in the high school range. So if anybody's listening that's thinking about this as a career, what would the path look like? What if they're struggling right now? How can they work towards a career in law?
Yeah, I will be perfectly honest. When I was in high school and middle school, I did not do very well. I really struggled in school. I wish I would have put more of an effort. I wish I would have taken it more seriously back then. I think it would have been easier for me in college and in law school. I was never one of those kids who could read something the first time and understand it. I needed a lot of extra help. So it wasn't easy for me. It was a very difficult path. When I got to college, I really buckled down and I took my studies very seriously. Thankfully, I had very supportive friends and family who understood that, and they understood that I'm not going to be able to spend a lot of time doing other things because I had to really focus and really study. I got extra help when I was in school, when I was in college, once I decided this was kind of the path I wanted to take. So, I worked as hard as I possibly could, and I did everything that I possibly could. And like I said, for someone who mainly got C's in high school, I was able to go to one of the best colleges in the state. I was able to go to one of the best law schools in the country because I didn't give up. I kept working really hard, and anyone can do it. If you put your mind to it, you can do it. So
that is awesome. So you said you got a lot of extra help. I know we have some kiddos right now, they're enrolled and they hear the word tutoring and they're like, no, that means I'm dumb. Like, I don't want tutoring. Like, what's your advice for a student who's struggling a little bit and maybe is either afraid to ask for help or there's a stigma to it? What's your advice for somebody like that right now?
I mean, don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, even now in my career, if there's things that I don't know or understand, I go to some of my partners for help and I ask them what might be very simple, basic questions, but I don't know the answer to it. I would meet all the time with my professors to go over things that I didn't know and I didn't understand. And yeah, I felt silly sometimes doing it. And but it helped me get ahead. It helped me understand what I needed to understand, and it got me to where I am today. So if I wouldn't have done that, I don't think I would have been able to, I wouldn't be here if I wouldn't have gotten the help that I needed. And the other people, you know, nobody looked down on me for it. I mean, I just, you know, when I applied to college, when I applied to law school, nobody knew that I got extra help. They didn't care. I did really well. And same thing when I applied to become a lawyer, they didn't look at that. That wasn't looked down upon, you know. So I mean, it was, I put in the work, and if that's what I had to do, that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, and I think it's time that narrative shifts in society of, well, if you ask for help, you're weak or you're not smart enough or you're not this enough. And it's like, we're not all superhumans. We're not all going to be great at everything, right? So we have.
Yeah. I mean, when I went to Marquette, my roommate, who's still a very good friend of mine, she could go to class, sit there and listen and get straight A's. She wouldn't take notes. She wouldn't study. She wouldn't do anything, and she'd get straight A's. I'd be sitting there, you know, preparing for an exam, studying 3 weeks in advance, and I get a B, you know, and which is still good by all means, but it was very frustrating, and knowing I was having to do all these things, but that's just, we're just wired differently. She just, you know, we learn very differently. You know, I learned kind of through college and law school what approaches I learn best from. So I try to like look at professors in ways that taught in ways that I could understand and ways that I could learn from. There are some approaches that don't work for me. So that's something I was just kind of able to learn and develop, and I kind of started to pick and choose so that I could be successful, and it worked. So
no, and I think you bring up a good point, because we all learn differently. We all have different learning styles. There's a reason there's all those personality tests and learning style tests, because we're not all the same. And so it is a matter of, find what works for you. If it's non-conventional, if it's not the way that your best friend sitting next to you in class is going to learn, or the way that your siblings learn, that's okay. Like that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means that, hey, I'm better suited for this, you know? Like, and I had to get help in high school just to pass my trigonometry and math 1050 course, right? Because math is not my thing. And I picked a degree where I had minimal math, because I was like, I'm not going to go far if I rely on math. So I think that's something that is important for students to hear, that like, hey, you don't have to be a mathematician to have a successful career, or you don't have to be a scientist to do what you love, right? You just have to have a basic understanding of those concepts to pass the course and move on. So I think
that also kind of gets me into another maybe branch off of that topic. Is we have students right now who, and I don't know how many times they've told this to me in a mentor call or whatever, but like, I'm never going to use this again. What's the point of this? Why do I need to do this? And my approach, how I look at it, is you might not be using that specific thing in geometry in your career, but the soft skills that you're pulling away from it, the problem solving, conflict resolution, stuff like that. In your job, maybe there's a lot of writing. There's obviously communication. So specifically for your career, what skills or subject areas do you think would be important for a high school student right now to focus on and understand that, hey, this is important now. It seems like something I might not use, but here's a takeaway from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can, in terms of being a lawyer, obviously it's going to depend on what area of law you're in. If you're doing all bankruptcy law, or you're doing criminal law, or trust and estate, I mean, it just kind of really depends on what you're doing.
Sure.
For me specifically, communication, conflict resolution, that's all I do. Legal research and writing, that's all I do. There are times, where I have to calculate child support and I got to get really fancy with the numbers. Math was not my forte. So I was not planning on having to use any of that. But here I am, having to count things and figure out, incomes and this and that. So that has played a huge role in my career. I did not expect it to, but I'm glad I at least paid attention to the basics and understood a little bit. But just, especially in those kind of areas, is problem solving. I never would have thought like having to really think through, a problem or this and kind of how to analyze it and come up with a solution. That's what we do all day. So, I definitely thought the exact same way. Even when I was in law school, I'm like, why do I care about, constitutional law? I'm going to do family law. This has nothing to do with what I'm doing, but it's somehow, some way, it all comes back and it intertwines. And even if it only comes up once or twice, it matters. And I at least remember a little something from it. So it does, surprisingly, it does come up and it does help in everyday, even outside my career, it does help in everyday life.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think that's the struggle, is getting, students to understand that, even though you may hate math or you may hate writing, like these are skills and foundational things that are going to help you throughout your life. The critical thinking, the problem solving, the writing skills, at some point you're going to be writing resumes and applying for jobs. So you need that basic understanding of grammar and sentence structure and all of those things as well. So I think, it's important to kind of shift that focus a little bit and recognize that I don't have to do this my whole life, but I do need that basic understanding.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. And so kind of back to when you were in high school and reflecting back on that, did you know you always wanted to be an attorney, or did that kind of evolve? And kind of how did your career plans change as you got older?
No, I never knew I wanted to be an attorney. To be honest, when I was in high school, like I said, I didn't do very well. I didn't even know if I'd be able to get into college. And I did, thankfully. So I was able to get into UW-Milwaukee. And I originally went in there thinking I wanted to go into psychology. And then I took some courses, didn't really care for it. And I always remembered as a kid loving to go to the eye doctor. Really weird. I don't know. And I'm like, I'm going to be an eye doctor. And then I quickly realized I can't even pass these basic biology courses. So I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work. So that was not my thing. I remember I wanted to, I've been taking dance classes ever since I was 2 or 3 years old. UW-Milwaukee is a real artsy school. But that was not sitting well with my parents about going to school and whatnot. But my father knew in his previous employment, he was president of the Teamsters Union. So he knew and worked with a lot of attorneys. And they were very close family friends. And one day, a couple of them were up at our house, and I just started talking to them one day about what they did and what their careers were. And it kind of sparked an interest. And I took a criminal justice course, which I thought was really interesting. And it just kind of went from there. A friend of my dad's invited me out to the courthouse. So I got to meet some judges, and they invited me to sit in on cases. So it just kind of evolved. And that's when I decided to major in criminal justice. I thought it was really interesting. I mean, you can major in anything. I mean, students have majored in, biology, chemistry, English, it doesn't matter what your major is, but that was something that just really sparked my interest. So it just kind of evolved from there. And I'll never forget the day I told my parents I wanted to go to law school, and their jaws just dropped, because they knew I struggled in school, and they knew law school was going to be really tough. And so yeah, it kind of just came out of nowhere, and I'm glad I did it. I mean, there's a reason it was meant to happen, and because it truly is my passion. So
as you were talking, it made me think of something, because I meet with students here and there. It's not like my main thing that I do at the school, but I am a mentor to some of our students. And I don't know how familiar you are with our demographic, but many of our students are currently in residential treatment. And many have this fascination with psychology and sociology and issues of the day and stuff like that. And so it made me think of some of those students who, and we actually have one student we just talked to the other day, a recent grad actually, and she has a really big interest in criminal justice. But I wonder if students who have those same interests have ever considered a career in law, or if it has even crossed their mind. And many students do follow that narrative, like, I'm in residential treatment, I'm struggling with my mental health, I'm struggling with my grades. And you're a prime example of, hey, I've been there, I struggled in high school. And here I am, I got through it, I worked hard and I did it. So that's just really cool to me to hear what your journey was.
Yeah. And I mean, and for those kids who are struggling with their mental health, I did it as well. As in high school, I had to go to a hospital for quite some time. I really struggled with depression and suicidal thoughts. I had a lot of problems, which is what kind of initially kind of sparked my interest in psychology. And it's interesting because now in my career, I work with so many children and families who are experiencing the same thing. And I can really relate to these kids of what they're going through, and can also kind of give a different perspective to these parents, and say, hey, look, this kid needs some help. We got to do something about this, because I've experienced firsthand what can happen if you don't. And so it's been very rewarding helping kids kind of through that, helping parents get their kids help, which has been it's difficult nowadays to really get. But that's something that every day, in almost every case we have children or parents who are really struggling with their mental health, and being able to help them get services or whatever it is very rewarding. And again, there are, in a lot of cases I have where I represent, parents or the clients, there is a lot of kind of a psychological component with it, where I am trying to therapeutically get them through this process, and kind of talk with them in that sort of way. So, I mean, I'm a lawyer, but at the same time, I'm also I should have gotten another degree in that, because it comes up in every single case that I have.
Oh, I'm sure. And
yeah,
and I think, for those listening who might be wondering, like, oh, well, what would I have to offer? Or I came from this background, like, you're that prime example of, you're probably better suited to relate to people because of the experiences you've had, right? And so those students who were like, well, I've gone through this and I've gone through this, like, you could be the perfect person to advocate for somebody because you understand what that's like. And I think that's awesome. Like, that's a superpower of, like, you have that empathy, you've been in their shoes, and you can really advocate for what they need because you've experienced it. And so that gives me goosebumps, because it's like, there's such
I feel like those kids trust me more, and can relate to me more, because they think, oh, a lawyer's coming to talk with me, they must have had everything, live this sort of life,
right? The silver spoon, right?
Yeah. And then when I kind of tell them, like, look, this is what I went through too, I struggled too, like, I experienced this too, I know what you're going through, it just, something clicks with them. And that's where sometimes I have to hold back my emotions when meeting with them too, because I remember sitting in their seat thinking these things too, and it's not easy. So I mean, I think, the profession could use a lot more people who are passionate about that area of psychology and sociology. And that's really important in what we do.
Yeah. I think that's a
Awesome.
huge part of it. And so,
Mhm.
and I'm a firm believer that all the experiences, all the hard things we go through are just designed to help us help somebody else down the road, right? Like, oh, I
Mhm.
can relate to this because I've experienced it and look at where
Yeah.
I'm at. And I think that's kind of the shifting that needs to happen for everybody is like, you are not this person or you're not bad or, all
Mhm.
those stigmas that are thrown at you. It's like, no, those give you the experiences to be a better human that can connect with
Mhm.
people later and help them get through the same scenario you've already
And I think
experienced.
it helps the parents too when I kind of explain to them, hey, look, I've been through this, and unless you do something about this or stop whatever you're doing or this or that, this is what could happen. So I think it's sometimes it's a little bit of a wake up call to other people too,
Oh, I'm sure.
as to the seriousness of it. So
Yeah,
Totally.
I'm sure.
You mentioned also early on, you got a chance to get in courtrooms, talk to judges.
mhm.
If somebody's thinking about this career, what are some opportunities that are out there, internships or like part-time jobs that might help somebody looking to go down this career path? Anything like that? Any recommendations that you have for students, for high school students and maybe students just starting college? What can you get into to help further your career?
So I mean, the courtrooms are public facilities. You can just walk in and go observe any courtroom proceeding that you want. Now, some are confidential, like some involving like the CPS cases, excuse me, you can't go into those. But for the most part, every hearing is going to be public. So I mean, I would just go into random courtrooms, just start talking with judges and say, hey, I'm kind of interested in this. Would you mind letting me sit in and maybe talk with me afterwards about the case? And I mean, every judge I've encountered was very receptive.
Yeah.
Um, when I was in college at Marquette, they had a pre-law clinic. So you could actually go to this clinic where lawyers volunteered their time to meet with people and answer questions for people. And I would go there and just volunteer my time and just witness and just kind of watch the interactions between attorneys and people. But I mean, I know for me right now, there's been several high school kids in our area who have been very interested, and I've had them come shadow me for a day. I've taken them to court proceedings. So I mean, if somebody's interested, just give us a call. Like we'll sit down with you, and I'm sure a lot of other law firms would be too. But like during college, like during the summer, I would apply for internships or clerkships. You just start making calls, see what's
Yeah.
out there. I mean, people are really willing to help out and teach as much as they can. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
I love that. Because I think that's probably intimidating for a lot of students is like, oh, I'm
It is,
interested in this, but where do I start? Who do I go
right.
to? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's good to hear that there's that like kind of that general sense of, hey, you're interested, I'm here to help, which
Yep.
is awesome. So I love that. And then one last question for you, as far as like the educational side of it goes. So if you could go back in time and talk to yourself in high school, what advice would you give to yourself?
Mhm.
Oh gosh. um, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna get through it. Just work hard, don't give up. There were so many times I didn't think I was gonna make anything of myself, that I wouldn't be anything worthy. So yeah, that you're gonna get through it. There's gonna be some tough roads ahead. Um, things are not gonna come easy to you, but if you work hard and you ask for help, you will get through it and you will make something of your life that you're proud of. So
That's awesome.
Ooh,
yeah.
goosebumps.
You can tell high school was not easy for me.
Well, and I don't think it's easy for a lot of people. And, we have this idea of perfection in society. And so all of us at some point or another feel that feeling of I'm not enough or I'm not good enough. I'm not going to be successful. Those negative stories that are on repeat in our head. And so yeah, just standing up and saying, no, like I can do this and don't give
Mhm.
up because we are our own worst critic. And so if we can just start to change that narrative in our minds of you
Yeah.
are enough. You're going to make something of yourself, and maybe
Yeah.
you're not going to be a millionaire that impacts like the entire world, but you can impact your sphere of influence, even if it's just your
Yeah.
family or your friends or whoever's in that immediate circle. Like that's still a huge impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
So we talked a little bit about students reaching out if they have questions to maybe a local firm or whatever, but it'd be really cool if you'd be willing to let us know how students can contact you if they have questions. We don't have to, we can maybe put the information in our show notes, but before we do that, can we just learn a little bit more about you? Like, what do you like to do in your free time? Like, what is Brittney outside of the courtroom?
Kind of boring. I don't know. No, I mean, I've been married to my husband since 2015. We've been together since, God, I don't even know how long, a very long time, since 2008. So we spend a lot of time together. Obviously, we have a 3-year-old little boy who's the light of our life, Sebastian. So we spend a lot of time doing things together as a family, whether we just go to a park or watch movies together, whatever it is. We're about to have another little child, a little girl who's due in a couple weeks. So right now my free time is trying to rest as much as possible and get as much sleep as much as possible. But yeah, I mean, we do a lot of things together as a family. We love to see our extended family. I like to read law related things when I can. Love watching movies, just, try and, separate work and personal life as much as possible. But yeah, I'm not super exciting outside the office. So, but yeah, just a lot of family time. So
That's great.
I love that. And congratulations on the new addition. That'll be fun. Is he excited to be a big brother?
He is. He's very excited. Yeah, I'm
an adjustment, right?
And that's another thing too. Speaking of having kids, that's one thing as a woman that I was really nervous about going into this career is this something that's going to be supportive of me being a parent? Because some careers are not. And this was one that I was worried about because I knew I always wanted to be a mother. It wasn't right away, but I knew at some point I would. And it's very supportive, especially if you find the right firm. The judges in my area are very supportive of me. My partners are very supportive of me. So it is 100% possible to have both of those things, to have a career and a family. That fear almost deterred me from going to law school. So thankfully I pushed through because I was able to have it both ways. So
that's cool.
Something to think about.
Good.
Yeah, no, that is cool. And I'm glad you brought that up because that is like, as a woman, I think that is something that, has to be considered because not all careers are as supportive of family. So it's nice to hear that in the law field, there are opportunities out there for women, which is
and
great.
it's possible to strike a balance between family life, home life, and work. So that's good.
And sometimes you have to make tough choices. About a year and a half ago, I took on a contract with a local county here to represent them in various cases. And I really enjoyed what I did. Financially, it was really great. But next thing I knew, I was working 12, 13-hour days, 7 days a week, and I never saw my family. So I cut it off and I said, I can't do this anymore. My family was more important and I needed to have a better balance. So it's nice to be able to make those decisions to do that. So.
Yeah, that's great. Because I think a lot of people in society, like work sometimes takes precedent. And then you're at this point where you reach burnout because you're like, I just don't ever have time for the important things.
Right.
And so it's nice that you can strike that balance and hearing, hopefully that's becoming more of a widespread culture in most careers, but it's good that it's an option for law as well. So but like Sarah said, where can people find you if they wanted to reach out and maybe connect? And we can just add that to the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you my firm's website. I can give you my email, my phone number, so they can have all that contact information. But they can go on our firm's website too. We have quite a few attorneys who practice in all different areas of law. So some very, very young attorneys. We got some right in the middle, and then some who are just about to walk out the door. So, I mean, we have all different sorts of life experiences in our firm, which is great. But I'm sure any of us would be happy to sit down with anyone and answer any questions that they have. So
Awesome.
Great.
Thank
Well,
you.
add that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you so much, Brittney. This was very informative. I love hearing about different careers and the path that it takes to get there. So thank you for sharing with us. It was
yeah. Thanks for having me. And if the
Thanks
kids
so
have
much,
any-
Brittney.
Yeah, and if the kids have any questions, please let me know. A partner and I, one of my partners and I, we actually go to the high school here and we give kind of a presentation, and some of the questions we get asked from the high school kids are really, really interesting. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
awesome.
So
Great. Well, thank you so much. We hope you have a good day.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.